I've teed him up, but I listened to your Instagram live today. It was, what an amazing story that you've got to share. And there was some really, really what I think are important messages in there. So I want to catch up, and I mean, shoot, the last time I saw you, who knows, or even got to have a good long chat with you. But I think the important stuff is to tell people your most recent experience, and we'll kind of dig in on what you took away from it.
Sure. I mean, do you want me to just kind of give you the goods on how it started, or what happened?
Well, I think just tell, people are just tuning in right now. Tell them what happened.
Yeah. So I guess in short, I started experiencing like a light cough. This is after we closed the gym, praise God, it was after that. We didn't have to worry about anybody else being at risk, but we had closed the gym, and about a few days later, I got the dry cough thing, and it really wasn't a big deal, but then started experiencing shortness of breath. Had no exposure to anybody that had COVID to my knowledge. So I really have no idea where I would have gotten it from. But in that time frame was basically hanging out with the family, but trying to have some distance, not snuggling with the kids at night, not snuggling on the couch, try to have some distance.
And do me a favor, because I think that people are one of two places. Maybe they're watching from internationally and they had a completely different experience, and maybe they've been watching from China and theoretically their curve is flattened, or maybe they're watching from one of the states that still doesn't even have social distancing protocols in place. So at this place, where was your head? Were you like, it doesn't matter if I get COVID, or, and not in a judgmental way, but some people are like, tell me where your head was at.
Like I was pretty calm. The shortness of breath thing is what really started to create the concern. It wasn't crazy, but it was enough to be concerning. And I ended up going in to get a test. They have like this hotline through my family doctor, which kind of walked through that system and process, and was able to go get a test. And it took me a couple of days to hear back, just because that's where the testing is right now. And 2 days later that I was positive. So pretty much right away went downstairs and did the self-quarantine thing, wife and kids upstairs. And at that point, during that little window is probably when I started feeling some of the worst with the shortness of breath, and never had a fever. I never had any body aches. It was all this cough, fatigue, and shortness of breath. And then 5 days later, my wife, Sarah, started showing symptoms. So she had been upstairs with the kids. She and the kids got tested. Her test came back positive. And before we found that out, we talked to the health department, and she came downstairs. I went upstairs to try to take care of the kids. So there's just like a huge dynamic with a family of 4 and little kids, and they're being homeschooled. And I mean, you name it, so it was really hard.
I think that, excuse me, when I heard you speaking earlier, something that jumped out is because we can all associate with this. The information changes not just daily, but almost hourly. And so 100%. For someone who was actually, diagnosed as having the virus, what was that like? Getting different answers from different people at different times. That
was probably the hardest part as a family, because I couldn't just be like, oh, I'll stay at home and, not be around anyone. I'll just whatever. So when I got tested, I had actually started to feel better. When I went to get tested, I was like, oh, maybe I'm coming out of something. Got tested, started to feel worse. And then when we found out, I was kind of in this limbo, climbing out of it, but was still downstairs for 5 days. But at the time, that was 17 for 14 days. And then a day later, it was, 7 days from the onset of symptoms, and you shouldn't have a fever for 72 hours, which I never had, and you should be feeling better. So they were kind of using that as a guideline, which is why I went upstairs to take care of the kids, because then my wife, Sarah, started feeling bad and she upstairs. But then kids started showing some symptoms, and even though their test came up negative, the health department said, hey, you got to treat them as they're positive. But how do you separate a 10 and an 8-year-old? Like, do you keep them in their own rooms? You've got to try to, rough.
And speaking to that as a parent too, whose kids or someone who has not been we're practicing social distancing.
Yeah.
But I let the kids go on bike rides, and it's this weird kind of mentality of like, are they going to police them? Like, do I need to fly my drone over the top of them? And like, so it's very difficult situation as an adult to wrap your head around, much less my kids, as you know, are the exact same age as yours, got 8 and a 10-year-old. And it's a really difficult thing to discuss and to explain like the gravity of the situation, make sure that they really get it and they understand how serious you are. Without message earlier that really resonated with me was to not live in fear, but don't be naive.
Yeah.
Which I want to hear you speak to, but especially for a kid, man, that's a very hard line to walk and to explain.
Oh, 100%. And that's probably was the most difficult thing with that situation, is how do I handle this with kids while I'm upstairs trying to recover, trying to make sure that they're apart, because one of them was showing symptoms, the other wasn't, but do they have it? And we don't want to panic, but checking to make sure their temperature's good. And then there's talk of, well, can I get it again? Or could it be worse? Or can I, but they've got to have a parent around. So it was, it was really challenging for sure.
And I'm really curious to hear you talk about this. Obviously you're a public personality and people look up to you, and you're, fantastic coach and people, follow your training. And so you're out there all the time, but you're not obligated to share this. Like why was it important for you to kind of tell people about this, share it, and let them kind of interact with you about it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I waited for 3 weeks, sort of for, I guess, on purpose. One, I didn't want to freak anybody out at the gym locally. I wanted to make sure that I had done kind of the due diligence there, and I told anybody that needed to, and thankfully no one was at risk. And then because there's so much uncertainty around the virus, what's crazy is like my symptoms were different than Sarah's, and hers are different than other people that we know that were hospitalized. I have friends that have been in the hospital on ventilators. I have other people that have had really mild symptoms, so there's such this broad scope of this that I wanted to at least be kind of climbing out of the hole a little bit. But I actually talked to Sherwood a couple days ago, and he's a good friend of mine. And I let him know, and he's like, oh my gosh, like I know has it. And he was cool. He said, I know there's a lot of like pros and cons. You could probably fill them up. But he said, if you did tell people publicly, it might just be an eye opener that even people that have a pretty stout level of fitness, you're not immune to this thing, and take it seriously. And it's not a cold. It's not just this like, oh, healthy people are going to be immune to it or bomb proof. It is no joke. It's not something to be walking around in fear about, but it is, it's a serious thing. People got to do their part to make sure that they're taking care of themselves and the people around them.
Yeah. And I love the message because it's hugely important. I think until you do have someone that and we have friends who had contracted it. Whoa, once you get that personal connection and it's no longer ethereal or, just some sort of concept, it hits a little bit closer to home. So yeah, how has that kind of changed how you're, making recommendations to people?
Yeah, sure. And I think, from the start, I've been really supportive of gyms closing and doing our part. I think that's a lot of it. I think for me, and I even told people in the gym this, I said, hey, we're closing our doors. I said, I'm not worried about like anybody here getting it and anything serious happening because we're healthy. And, I said, I want to do our part to take care of those that maybe don't have like a super strong immune system. And whether that's because of pre-existing conditions or whatever, our parents that are elderly, whatever. But I guess my encouragement to you guys now is just even with social distancing and even with doing all the right stuff, which is what we were doing, you just got to be aware of it and don't walk around freaked out. But it's it's not just like this cold that I kind of thought. I thought, oh, if the healthy people, it'll just be an inconvenience. But the more it's out to me, after telling them today, they've been like, wow, I'm glad you said something. I've had some really serious side effects from it or other things. And people just need to, one of the things that I said earlier is I think our community in particular, especially in times like this, we really feel like we just want to like do a bunch more work, or we have more time on our hands. So we just want to light our hair on fire with workouts. But remember, your training should be making you guys healthy, you know, and that's a stress on your body, which is good because stress on your body can give you an adaptation. But when you have a lot of other stress going on, maybe financial stress or things going on with a family dynamic or the quarantine or what it is, you're kind of adding another stress on top. And if you guys need to take it easy for a day, take it easy for a day. If you need to take the clock off, take the clock off. If you need to skip a day, skip a day. We just need to all support one another and get through this so that we're healthy on the other side.
Yeah, I think it's really important that you really drive that home too, right? Like spell it out very clearly for people because I'm sure, I mean, gosh, you were a coach when I started coaching. And so you've been doing this long enough to know that that's probably one of the hardest things to do before a crisis like this comes up, is to slow people down or save them from themselves. So I think that message really resonates as well. And in fact, like I was looking at your Instagram, I think it might even have been before this, but you did a post where you spoke the drip mentality. And it was maybe a little bit of a pivot off of this, but I'd love to hear you kind of speak to that as well. Maybe we'll start moving into you as an affiliate owner and how you're kind of navigating these times.
Yes. So mostly that mentality is just as we try to serve our community, everyone's adjusting. So I've got a couple thoughts. People talk about this big pivot, right? And pivoting to online model and Zoom stuff. And I'm 100% on board because I think that's like really important to support our community, keep people moving, engage with them. They need that. But I also hear people talking about like, hey, this is going to be a new revenue stream when we're done and this and that. And people want community. They want to be inside the walls of your gym, throwing down with their friends. And like, so for the affiliate owners out there, yes, do that stuff, but don't put all your eggs in that basket. This is just my opinion, because people are going to be so hungry to be back. So when they come back, like be ready, be better than ever as a coach, as a training staff, as a program, whatever you guys have going on. And in the meantime, this drip mentality, because I think I've been telling a lot of people, especially locally for us, what we've seen here is we kind of followed the school. I know you get it with kids. It's like all of a sudden the school gets delayed another 2 or 4 weeks, and we're not going to be open before a school's open. That's for sure. You know? So I don't think our kids are going to be going back to school. So I think the earliest we would be back in our gym in Park City is probably June, and that would be the early side. So the drip mentality is more, instead of giving your clients like a fire hose of information and a fire hose of things, these 10 different accessory classes that you can do and these 50 different Zoom times you can do, trying to do is every 2 weeks add another small thing in. So have it be like a 30-minute stretching or mobility class, and then 2 weeks later we drop in a 30-minute kind of like buys and tries class and have it be fun. And another 2 weeks we'll come up with another idea. So doing these things with kind of that drip mentality, engage our members and help those people feel part of the community, and maybe get some more coming to the Zoom classes that maybe not would have in the past.
It's fantastic, and it's logical and well thought out in a time when people are a bit panicky and really trying to patch a lot of holes, which I also can totally appreciate and I sympathize with hugely. So what are some of those things though? You know, if people were to even choose to learn from a master, and perhaps there's some things that could be incorporated, or perhaps they're just unique to Park City, but I would love to hear how you guys have, what tools you have used to help keep serving your membership and keep people informed.
Yeah, obviously the Zoom classes are, I would say, almost a no-brainer for you guys to do that. We took ours and condensed them. So typically we run 6 classes a day. Now we're just running 3 Zoom classes, and the purpose there is to kind of condense things so we get more people engaged. We are going to kind of shift things to later, because probably like most people, they're starting to wake up way later. You know, 8:30 class is like now the 5 a.m. class. So we're moving things around a little bit. I think anytime that you can show people that you're doing what they're doing, or post Facebook Live video that you can save and post on later on as a coach or trainer, anytime that you can join the Zoom class that others are teaching, I think is really helpful. And then aside from that, we've seen some really cool stuff with the affiliates that do the programming that we offer. Everything from like cool like bingo challenges to team things to scavenger hunts to, I mean, you name it. It depends a little bit on what their dynamic is and what the lockdown's like. But we have some people in Spain that are like really stuck in their homes. And it's been awesome to see what they've done and ways that they've engaged their community. And some of it might even just be like a time to have coffee with your members. You know, it doesn't have to be around fitness. Just be engaged.
It's your point before. People are going to be craving to get back in the gym because it's really the community element of it that, like we used to always say, it's like they come for the fitness, they stay for the community. It is the unique aspect of what people bring to affiliates.
100%. And I think that's why so many gyms have the potential to make it through this, is because people want to come back. It's not like hey, we just closed our doors and stopped memberships. People want to support. So we're just trying to be really flexible. We went to this essentially a donation-based membership, but the way we did it is instead of missing communication, we left our membership going and we let everybody know through every we could, hey, memberships are still going because we want to support our landlord. He needs to make money too. He needs to, like, if we don't pay him, he's in a bind. So we're all trying to support one another. We just let them know if you need to put things on hold, if you need to pause, if you want to pay half, like whatever, just want to support you with that. And people, of course, have reached out and been like, hey, we need to do this. And it's like, all right, we're not going to boot you from the community. You know, it's just, we're going to all take our breath here over the next 1-3 months, whatever it is, and come out stronger on this thing.
In some ways, this may be harder to answer and maybe somewhat hypothetical, so I apologize.
It's all right.
But you also train competitive athletes as well. What are you telling those guys where they're seeing the same uncertainties that we are, but in terms of like a competition season or schedule, there's just a grenade that's been thrown and there's really no telling when they'll get to compete again?
Yeah, it's funny, as over the years, so much of the online programming that I offer, it's really shifted toward the general population, which I think is probably due to like my passion, you know, as I've kind of leaned into riding my dirt bike and skiing. So we really only have a very, very few amount of those. And most of them are just general population, everyday people. So it's been more about, again, them offering a ton of options for them, lots of information, but the people that have reached out, there's obviously a lot of uncertainty, but I do think it would be foolish, obviously, if you're staying healthy with the training volume, it'd be foolish to throw everything out that people have worked for thus far, right? So even though there's a time of unknown and uncertainty, I have no insight to this. I would be surprised if there was not some kind of CrossFit games or form of that in some way or another this year.
Sure.
Whether it's online or whether it's pushed back. So relax, don't get all balled up, stay focused on one day at a time. And that's really all we can do right now for all of us, really.
Yeah. It's interesting, and I'm not surprised to hear that you're geared towards more everyday athletes, and it's cool to hear you talking about balance of lifestyle as well. It used to be a joke almost, right? Like you hired the first time we literally made a what was the video we called it? What am I going to do with all this fitness?
Yeah.
So how is that balance coming, man? It's a really interesting journey because I'm sure that you are still a supremely fit human being. I'm sure that you don't put the hours into the gym that you used to, but I'm sure it's still hard to reconcile those two things.
It was for a long time. And I'm telling you what, guys, it is so good on the other side of some of your peak fitness. But the trade out for the lifestyle that I get to live now, once you start to do that, that is gym tops an hour tops. And that's including, you know, my old man warm up and getting a workout in and maybe some accessory work. But the rest of the time, like, here's the thing is, I think people just forgot, right? And it's okay. Like we all go through this cycle of CrossFit, I think, where we do it and we love it. We want to do it more. So we do it more, and then we pop in on a competition or whatever. But we forget that, like, you guys that do this frequently, you have a privilege, and the privilege is that you can go do almost anything you want at any time you want, and you don't have to train for it. Like, I went and did the Idaho City 100 on a dirt bike, and I finished it. I ran a marathon without training for it, and I finished it. Like, we're not going to win these things, but you guys need to go and, like, celebrate the fact that you can do that. And I think people forgot, like, you have worked hard, and now go experience it. Like, go sign up for the 5K, do the trail run, go to the Tough Mudder, go at an Olympic lifting meet. I don't care. Like, do whatever, like, live life outside the gym and let that fitness
and what you're not saying is go do another smaller competition that's CrossFit, and go do another medium size, go do something else completely.
Yeah. And if you're in that space still where we love doing that stuff, awesome, do that. But ask yourself the question and revisit that every 6 months or every year and be like, is this what I want? Because I think people forget what they want, and all of a sudden they're in this kind of, this vortex where they get sucked into something that they think they have to do. Here's, like, guys, go live outside, thrive.
Yes. It's such a first world problem, and I'm almost embarrassed to share it with you, but you might know about it already. But one of the biggest personal effects, I guess you could say, was like yesterday, my Google Calendar alerted me that it was the day I was supposed to leave to go meet the Chans in France and do the Haute Route. And it was like the biggest heartbreak, but things like that, message received, and I couldn't agree more. It's like, get out and ski, get out and sport, get out and play with your kids. See what all that fitness does for you that you gained.
100%.
So I gotta ask then, like, how was this?
Man, it was good until they closed the resorts. I mean, all that got shut down. But I got a number of good days in, and it's cool. I do some work for Ski Utah, so I do some writing for them and some blogs, and I have the ability to kind of resorts. And the mountains, they just stolen my heart. So it's anytime I can get out in them and play, it's just it's hard to beat the feeling of skiing in PAL.
I do. Well, I want to leave people on a positive note before I let you take off. And you did have some kind of messages of hope earlier. You mentioned specific Bible verses in Philippians, I think, but I don't know that you actually said what they were. I'd just be interested to hear, one, almost been through the worst case scenario. So how did you, what kind of tools did you use, and encouraging people to use when they are feeling maybe huge amounts of anxiety, stress, whatever the case may be?
So for me, and wherever you guys are on this journey, like, I pass no judgment. I care about same. For me, my relationship with Christ has been like an anchor forever, as I've gone through competition, even as a young kid, like dealing with stress and competitions. And that's what I believe people will find the most peace in. And Philippians is a really cool book. A guy, Paul, wrote it. And this guy, Paul, he wrote a bunch of the letters, and then he actually wrote it from prison. So he was in prison, chained to a wall.
You guys are kindred spirits, I see.
I know, right? Yeah, Paul was quarantined. And it's really cool. He's writing basically a letter to a church that he helped start. And it's a group of people that he really cares about and he really loves a ton, and you can tell. And they are in a really compromised place as well, where they've got persecution happening to them, and there's authority over them through the Roman Empire. And he's encouraging them. And two things. It's only 4 chapters. You got to check it out, read it like a book, and there's 2 sections in there that really resonated with me. In chapter 3, it talks about how Paul, in him knowing Christ, it surpassed everything else. So everything that he gained from essentially his previous life or whatever he had gained, he counted as loss, because him knowing Christ was that important and that awesome to him. And it was a good reminder for me, even though I'd been stripped of stuff and not even close to what other people have. But even though I had been stripped of certain things that I found identity with, it didn't matter compared to knowing Christ. And then the other one is really cool. It's really cool. It's in chapter 4, and it says, rejoice in the Lord always, always. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. And then this is the part that I think is really cool. It says, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. And what that made me reminded of again was, in that verse, God's not promising to answer my prayer. He's not promising to heal me. But what he is promising is that his peace, which transcends our understanding, will be there. And that's what I experienced. And for those people that are maybe searching for that, or if you find that helpful, talk to him, because he's waiting. He's and the last kind of thought, there's another Bible verse that says perfect love casts out all fear. And a lot of people are living in fear right now, and perfect love, which comes from Jesus Christ, is what casts out that fear. And if we rest in that, it's a continual thing that I have to do. We don't have to be afraid.
Love it, man. I love it.
Thanks, bro.
And thank you for sharing your wisdom. To say that I miss you, it's an understatement, dramatic understatement. I know that a lot of people are cleaning things out, so I have to share with you. I found today in the garage.
Yes.
This is a panel from the original Update Show desk.
No way! Look at Chan. Yes, that is so
look at this
cool.
guy right
hey,
here.
Look at this looking good. The Terminator.
It was post like the headphone era.
So great, man. That's great. Really
That's going
cool.
on the wall somewhere soon. But
I love it, dude.
My brother, it has been with you. I'm sure people love hearing your voice. I'm so happy that you're healthy, and love to the family, and we'll be thinking about you guys. And honestly, thank you for sharing the story, because I think, like I said, it puts a personal touch on it. And to your point about not living in fear, but not being naive, like, you are a perfect person to say that. Like, fitter than I could ever hope to be, and still certainly not immune to this thing. So a million thanks.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it.
Okay, we'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Take care, Ryan.